Hey friends, Pastor Michael from Organic Church here with Sydney Erickson. Man, I'm getting good at this. Pastor Holly Daisy, who is feeling better. Thank you, Jesus. Nick Offalter and Pastor Roger Deerdorf. We are ready to talk to you guys tonight a little bit about dealing with disappointment, part 2.
Part 2.
Now, Nick, as we have traditionally done, history. You got to have something.
Oh, hang on tight. Hang on tight.
Margie, I'm sorry
Stay
if you've
with
already
me now.
heard. Yeah, let's apologize to Margie if she's already heard this.
Yeah. So try to keep our heads out of the clouds. But last week we did Robert E. Lee. So I thought, what better way to do part 2 than look to the other side of Ulysses S. Grant, which would be Lee's main opponent coming in 1864. But Grant, in his own right, I believe, probably even had more disappointments and setbacks than Lee did. And so like I said, just hang on tight. I'm going to just kind of go over his life story a little bit. And I'll try to keep it as, like I said, try to not to give too much detail. I could talk about this stuff all night.
Yeah, the
but we got
abridged
greater
version.
purposes here than just talking about the Civil War. So
We're just going to start your own Civil War podcast.
yeah,
There we go.
just branch off. Yeah, sounds good to me.
It's a spin-off.
Right, yeah. Okay, so Grant, whether you know it or not, he was born in Ohio. I think it was like Fort Hamilton, something like that. But his father moved to Galena, Illinois. And his father, he runs a tannery, which is like leather goods and stuff like that. Well, if you know anything about tanneries and stuff like that, the smell of those places are just awful.
Case in point, they used to use like animal urine to do that.
Oh.
So
Okay.
that's part of that smell.
Well, see,
Okay, I didn't know that.
That possum wouldn't bother you then.
Yeah. So they used to sell, like people who were poor would sell urine to tanneries to help. That's
Wow.
the pot to pee in statement. That's where
Oh.
that comes from. They would
Well, that
pee.
explains
And
it.
that's, it's weird, but it's, yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Why do I know that? Nobody knows, but I do.
Useless information.
You got it. I'm your best trivia partner. I just say that. All right. Sorry. I digress.
So the smell, I guess from a young age, Grant could not stand the smell of it. And his father learned very quickly that Grant was not going to make a good business partner, or he was not going to carry on the family business.
Poor guy.
So his father decides to send him to West Point, which Grant didn't want to do that either. He didn't really want to become a soldier. But he gets there, and it's funny because when he gets there, they have his name on the ledger as U.S. Grant, which was wrong. But he didn't want to point it out because he didn't really want to ruffle anybody's feathers right from the get-go. So he just right then and there adopted the name as U.S. Grant.
Huh.
Interesting.
And that'll have a lot of connotations as he goes along in his military career. But yeah, just interesting. It was an error. So that's how he starts off getting that name.
Fun fact, I know someone like that with their birth certificate. They spelled it wrong, and that's what they go by now.
Interesting.
It was like
Huh.
one, I don't want to say their name because it's a unique name, but there's one letter missing, and it's a new name because of it. And they just
Really?
kept it as is.
Interesting.
So he gets to West Point, and he doesn't do very well overall. He's kind of just like, he pretty much goes through the motions. He's very good at caring for horses, the horseback riding, all that thing. I think he was very good at mathematics, but everything else he graded very low. So he's going to graduate, I believe, like 21st out of 39 cadets at West Point. So 21st out of 39. Now, where do you think Lee graduated in his class?
First.
Definitely
You're
in the top.
close.
Definitely in the top 3.
Number 2.
Number 2.
And fun fact about Robert E. Lee, he never had a single demerit in his whole 4 years at West Point, which a demerit is any type of infraction for whether just not making your bed, not having your shoes shined. I mean, just any little thing they give you a demerit for. So it's almost unheard of that
Wow.
anybody could get through
Interesting.
4 years without one, but he did. But again, as I've learned, just being a good student at West Point did not necessarily mean you're going to make a great general. Like I said, he graduates at 21st. But he has plans. Once you graduated from West Point, you would do like a tour of duty. Well, he had planned after that tour of duty that he was going to resign because he did not want to be in the Army. thought he might be better suited for something else. So while he's stationed in St. Louis, he meets his wife, and he has plans to marry her, but the Mexican War breaks out before he can marry her. So now he has to wait. So that's one of his first disappointments. After the Mexican War, he's then stationed, I believe, somewhere in Washington State. And while he's there, he pretty much grows pretty despondent because I think I explained this last week. When you're out on one of them outposts, I mean, it gets pretty lonely. Mm-hmm. There's not much to do. So you don't have too much purpose. So you can get really depressed being out there. And it's, I believe, at this point where Grant first starts to drink. And that's his way of coping with this despondency of being away from the people he loved. And he'll kind of move into different. Posts. He'll go back to Missouri, I believe, Jefferson Barracks, and it becomes a point where he resigns from the Army, and the legend is that it had to do over drunkenness. And I think, as most historians put it out, he had a choice either to resign or,
be let go.
Be let go. So I think he took the higher road and resigned. Although nobody can quite agree. I don't think he ever did really anything, too troubling. Mm-hmm. It was just somehow this came about. But this is going to haunt him as he goes along in his military career, that he kind of has this over his head. So after he resigns, he moves into, I believe he goes back to Missouri, and he's going to try his hand at business, and he's going to try his hand at a lot of different business ventures. He's going to fail them all. Everything he tries, he fails. And it gets to the point where I believe he has to, I think they go close to his wife's family for a little bit in Missouri, but by the end, he has to move all the way back to Galena, Illinois, where his father's tannery shop was. And to make ends meet, he had to go work for his father at this tannery. The one thing he didn't want to do his life, and that's where he ends up. Kind of a side note, I believe when he's in Missouri, he tries to start his own farm, and he calls that farm Hardscrabble. And he builds a really modest house by himself. He tries to get the farm going, do all that, can't make it work. So, again, and I believe there's at one point in Galena where he's selling firewood on the corner of the street and pawning his watch in order to buy Christmas presents for his family. So things get that rough for him.
That's crazy.
So again, he's unsuccessful at everything he does. He just cannot find his niche in life. And another really cool side note is his wife's family, they were slave owners. If you were in like southern Illinois, Missouri, there was slavery in that parts of those states. And his father had given his wife one slave, just probably as a wedding gift, I'm going to assume. And of course, back then, a lot of people, if you were hard up for money, one of the first things you do is probably sell your slaves, because you could get, you could get a lot of money out of a slave if they were healthy. And but Grant doesn't do that. He actually, instead of selling the slave, he sets the slave free and gives him his freedom. So even when he's that low on that point of despondency, rather than do something like that, he frees him, which I thought was pretty
awesome.
neat.
Yeah.
And I think, and I wanted to discuss too, like with the Mexican War, because we were talking about Lee last week and the fact that he fought for his state, he resigned from the U.S. Army and all of that. Well, I think on the flip side of things, the Mexican War was really started by James K. Polk, the 11th president, and his idea is they wanted to expand the boundaries of the United States all the way to California. And of course, so there's Oregon territory, there's a California territory, New Mexico territory, so all Arizona territory, all that territory out west. But of course, he's a Democrat, Southern Democrat, and their main idea for extending the U.S. boundaries and extending it west was to extend slavery.
Oh.
So Polk, the main reason the Mexican War is going to start is because he wants that territory for the United States. And of course, the Southern politicians in Congress, they think, yeah, this is going to be our perfect opportunity to expand slavery westward. So Grant doesn't agree with this. And in fact, he thinks it was one of the most unjust wars the United States ever fought in. But he's a young cadet right out of West Point. You know, he fights in the war. He wins a lot of credentials for doing so. He learns a lot from his top commanders. But he is fighting in a war that he doesn't agree with because he is part of the U.S. Army. And I just thought that was another interesting thing, you know, talking about Lee, is like looking in a broader spectrum. Sometimes maybe we can look at this for all wars and all these young boys and young men. Even though you're fighting in that war doesn't necessarily mean that you're agreeing with everything that's going on, or
especially
the reason
at that
maybe
time.
that war is being started in the first place.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so getting through all of that, when the Civil War starts, now Grant is trying to get a command after the Civil War begins. And so during that time, if you had been in the Army, usually, let's say, because Grant was mainly from Illinois, you would go to like a congressman, somebody in politics, something like that, to get you your commission, either command a regiment or whatever. So you kind of work through politics to get that. Well, his that tag of drunkenness is kind of already kind of starting to haunt him, and he can't seem to get anybody to give him a regiment or a command. I think even Lincoln turns his request down. He tries to get a post on George McClellan's staff, which George McClellan was the first overall commander of the Union forces. And McClellan turned him down. So I think eventually Grant finds a congressman that's willing to put his foot forward and finally gets him a command of a regiment. Little time goes by. Grant starts to get a little bit of success. People start to notice him, so he becomes a brigadier general, and then eventually he becomes a major general of volunteers.
A modern major general.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Say that 10 times fast.
So one thing leads to another. Grant starts to get a lot of success come in 1862. He captures two major forts at Fort Henry and Fort Donelson. Lincoln starts to take notice of him. But of course, there's other people in the Army that take notice of it too, and they're going to start getting jealous because he's doing things. And of course, he's got that tag of drunkenness on him. He's a nobody. And he came from the West. If you came from out West, a lot of times you didn't get a lot of credit. So they're constantly trying to undermine him. And several times, like after Fort Donelson, he will lose his command to this General Halleck, which he will become the general-in-chief, basically, of the whole Army. But at the time, Halleck is over Grant. Every time Grant has any success, Halleck wants to take credit for it and basically remove Grant from command. And this happens several times up until like 1862. And there's a great story about Grant Grant fights through a lot of adversity to get to where he is. And even though if you just looked at a summary, he has a lot of success, but there's always a lot of these setbacks that come with it. So, and again, just the ongoing political thing he's dealing with, plus just the issue of, these battles are very hard on him. And when he gets to 1862, it was the Battle of Shiloh on Pittsburgh Landing in Tennessee. And the first day of the battle, they're losing. He's getting beat up pretty good. He's outnumbered. And it gets to the end of the day, and it just starts raining really hard. And Grant, most of the time, he did not. A lot of commanders would commandeer somebody's home to be their headquarters. Grant wouldn't do that. Usually he'd sleep outside. He'd, just sleep on the ground or wherever he could find a comfortable spot. So
those two statements don't go hand in hand. Ground and comfortable. Well, not a thing.
yeah. So after this first night at Shiloh, I think he's injured in the ankle somehow. I think either his horse throws him or something. But he says he's sitting underneath this tree in the rain. And, of course, he's feeling pretty bad about the first day. His ankle's hurting him, so he's like, he can't sleep because it hurts so bad. And the rain's really coming down, so he thinks, well, I'll just go over to this house underneath this porch and sit. Just, get out of the rain a little bit. Mm-hmm. But, of course, he goes to the porch of this house, and it ends up the house was a hospital. Of course, while he's sitting there, of course, he's witnessing all the amputations and all the treatment of the soldiers and the screams and the agony going on. And he can't take that. He can't take it. And then he starts to think, well, geez, I just got a little bruised ankle here, and these guys are, they're having limbs cut off, things like that. So he retires back to his tree in the pouring rain rather than stay there. And if you're familiar with William Tecumseh Sherman will be like another hero of that war. And Sherman and him get to be pretty close. And I think Sherman walks up to him when he's sitting underneath the tree. And Sherman says, well, we've had the devil's own day, haven't we? And Grant says, yep, we sure have, but we'll lick him tomorrow. And that was the great thing about Grant was no matter how bad it got, the next day, he was always willing to go forward and willing to go back at it.
Yeah.
And so eventually, just to move it right along, Grant becomes a major general in the United States Army. He was a major general of volunteers, but that was almost that. How should I say that? It was. It only lasted as long as the war lasted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like once the war ended, he would go back to his regular rank of whatever he was. Yeah. But now he'll be actually, by May of 1864, he'll be actually a major general. Lincoln rises into command over all the armies and all the territories after his huge victory at Vicksburg in July of 1863. Which the Vicksburg thing is something in itself. He starts that campaign in October of 1862, and it takes him until July of 1863 to lay siege to Vicksburg and actually have that city surrender.
Wow.
And, so talk about, perseverance. A lot of setbacks there. Just a lot of things going on, but he just kept going. He always just kept going despite no matter how many disappointments he had. And so, of course, he gets to, as we say in Civil War history, he comes east. He comes to Virginia, out of the Western Theater into the Eastern Theater, and becomes Lincoln's top commander. And this is where he's going to face Lee for the first time. They were always in different theaters, so they had never faced each other in battle. And on the first day, the Battle of the Wilderness, as it was called, Grant faces off against Lee, and Lee catches him off guard. Grant gets halfway through the wilderness and he stops. Everything stops, and Lee takes advantage of it, really smashes him up, gets him tangled in the wilderness. And this is a battle that the woods will catch fire because of the sparks and all that. And a lot of men will perish. Wounded men won't be able to get out of the flames. He gets caught in the wilderness, and there's a story that after that first day, Grant goes into his tent, throws himself down on his cot, and starts crying, just starts bawling. And nobody had ever seen him act like that before.
Yeah, emotional.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to assume, just from, wounded men being burned up in the flames and just, the pressure and all that kind of thing. And from 1861 to 1863, I think the Union Army had and the Army of the Potomac had like 5 commanders. And other than George Meade, who won the Battle of Gettysburg, after every single battle, that general would retreat. No matter what the outcome was, after the first day, they would just lose nerve and they would retreat and go back to Washington. So, of course, when he goes into his tent and throws himself down, they're thinking, well, here we go again. Well, we'll probably be retreating in the morning. Sure enough, come the next day, he comes out of his tent, and he directs them to keep going south toward Richmond, which was the Confederate capital, and everybody was like, wow, okay, things have changed.
Yeah.
They could immediately see that there was a change in who was leading them. And again, I think it all goes back to the fact that this was a very humble guy who was humbled by his disappointments. I think it's adversity. I think he even used that term. He's like, anybody that doesn't have adversity, that doesn't have disappointments, there's I don't know if you can quite lead without having adversity, because you just don't have that understanding or that empathy.
Yeah.
Or that strength. So I think that was very important to who he was and to his command, and I think it had a lot to do with why he was so successful and became the man that was ultimately responsible for leading the United States to victory during that war.
For sure.
And just as a last note, it was really cool because obviously at the surrender with Lee, Grant really respected Lee, and he allowed all of the Confederate soldiers to go home with their own personal possessions. And the main point was he was going to pardon all the Confederates as long as they adhered to the rules of that pardon.
Yeah.
But of course, when Lincoln was killed and Andrew Johnson was elected president, Andrew Johnson wanted to roll all that back, and he wanted to start bringing these ex-Confederates in and start arresting them and, putting them on trial. And Grant basically had to say, no. He goes, that will just destroy the entire integrity of everything we've done.
Worked up to.
And it was, I was in charge of that. And if I go back on my word, he says, we're going to lose all our integrity.
A man is only as good as his word.
Yeah. And he actually had to basically tell Johnson, either you abide by, my, what we came up with, or I'm going to resign.
Yeah.
And of course, Grant was way more popular than Johnson. Johnson knew he couldn't do anything about it. And I don't think Lee ever knew how far Grant went, how far he was willing to go for Lee. To make sure that he got pardoned and was unmolested by the federal government.
You made a really great point that I wanted to touch on, specifically about, my gosh, the point that you made eludes me, but the note that I wrote down was, history is almost always written from the side of the winner.
Yes.
And I think that that's what you were saying, like, that prompted that thought. History is almost always written by the side of the winner. And every time I think about that, I always go back, and that's when I say to myself, I already have the victory.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have to worry about, like, my disappointments, because I'm the winner. The history is already written.
Right.
So there's a whole,
great point.
It's I'm going to get in trouble for sharing this. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. As a matter of fact, this person said to me today, don't talk about me on your podcast. And I said, well, no promises. And here we are. I have somebody that works with me, great friend, fantastic person. And their life has just been riddled with disappointment. That's what they thrive in chaos, because that's what they've known most of their life, and not from poor upbringing. Might I mind you, because they were raised in the church. They are very involved in church. They attend regularly, do all of the things. But the hard part to remember is that because you do that, you are a target.
Right.
And so life becomes a little more disappointing, because, we like to think that we're going to get all of the sunshine and rainbows, and we don't get most of it.
Nope.
We see a lot of bad people having good things happen to them, and we don't know how to process that. It's a lot of times disappointing for us. So every time I think about disappointment, I think about how every day we allow it to affect us and stop us from moving forward, but really we don't have to. And then the scripture that I wrote, that I jotted down, was Psalm 34, 17 through 19. And it says, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all of their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. The righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from all of them.
That's what I had written down last week.
Okay, so and I've got another one that I know was shared last week, but it didn't sink in until I really started to reading it. I mean, that's an amazing statement. We have nothing to worry about because the Lord will deliver us from all of them, not some of them,
Right.
not maybe if he's got time, if he's not bored, but all of them.
Yeah.
That's a big statement, and it's something to think about.
Yeah.
But just as the generals, you have to have endurance
Sure.
to follow that, walk that out.
You can't quit when I didn't get my way. Well, God doesn't love me, and this isn't going to work. You're right,
Right.
And that's spiritual maturity. So we can
Yeah.
loop that back another
it was,
lesson.
It was the exact opposite for both those men. Neither of those men were prideful men. Like, they didn't get their feelings hurt easy.
Yeah,
And Lee, like you said, history is always written by the winner.
Mm-hmm.
But Lee could understand that. I think he was defeated in that war, but he always had God on his mind first. And the way he handled that defeat, I truly believe that those two men were put in that position they were in ordainedly.
For a time such as
Yeah,
that.
oh,
Time
for sure.
such as that. Because
For
if
sure.
it would have been any other two, like I said, that war would have went on much longer.
Yeah.
And it probably would have been a lot more ugly.
yeah.
You
Than it
know,
already
just the way
was.
the surrender was handled. I don't think any other two men would have handled it quite that way. And it was both because they had that same, as you said, they had that same mindset that,
The other thing that what you just said, they both had the same mindset. They were both like that could have been much worse than it was. And again, I say this as a whole, but we as Christians, most of the time, we don't handle ourselves well when we're facing adversity like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So we like to think that we can do that, but
Until we're actually there.
The first time that something happens to us, we become defensive.
It's
Paralyzed.
very hard.
It is.
really is.
Yeah.
It is. Paralyzed is probably a great word. Because you stop thinking logically, you
Yeah.
start thinking emotionally, and that's not
That will get you into trouble.
every
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
every single time.
because dare I say, sometimes religion feels really good until something bad happens.
Yeah,
And you have to be like, oh, what's this?
yeah,
I didn't expect this. Why is this happening? I've been, reading my Bible every day. I've been following the rule. I've been going to church every week. Why did this happen? This shouldn't be.
There's a little meme on the internet. Sometimes you'll see it, and it says something to the effect of, and it's. Do you guys remember that show, Mama's House?
The movie, right?
No. This was a TV show that had Carol Burnett was on the show, but it wasn't her show. Vicki Lawrence was
Vicki
on the
Lawrence,
show,
yeah.
and
Am I too young for
okay.
this?
yeah, you're too young for this. Technically, I'm too young for this, but I like old TV, so I'm an old soul. But they say there's like a little meme, and it says, "Well, Mama, you don't have to go to church every Sunday in order to be saved." And she says, "Yeah, you also don't have to wear a parachute to jump out of an airplane, but it's a good idea."
Oh, yeah.
And my point to that is you're right. We think coming to church every Sunday is that lifesaver, that we're always going to have everything we need from doing these things.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that. There's still a lot more that you have to do in order to fill in those gaps. But it is a good idea. You can't just, I don't need to go to church. I can watch online, and I don't have to be part of a small group, or I don't have to fellowship with like-minded believers. I hate to tell you. Yeah, you do. Because what happens is the world creeps in.
And they're going to attack you.
Everything becomes a total chaotic mess, and your disappointment is improperly placed. You become disappointed in God
Right.
for not providing, not in yourself,
Not in
for
yourself.
not doing the
Right.
right thing, or not disappointed in your friends for leading you astray, but disappointed in God because He didn't save me from that. He didn't protect me from that.
Oh,
I said it last.
You pushed away from
I
him,
said it
no?
last Sunday, and I'll say it again. You can't bless stupid. Like, you can't do it.
You can't fix it either.
Has there ever been an important figure in the Bible that just had a great life with no disappointment, no setbacks, no?
I don't think so.
I mean,
Enoch? Would that count?
Well, and you
Eh.
could probably say the same for Elisha to some
Yeah.
degree. I mean, there were still
Right.
setbacks, but he was still pretty faithful. But even if we talk about Job, poor Job,
yeah. Yeah.
he got beat up, and God said, "Go for it." Like, he didn't stop
well,
the
and
enemy.
the point I always like to make about Job is that you can read through that portion of it pretty quickly. I always tell people this:
Yeah.
you can read through any part of the Bible really quickly. But I think with Job, this didn't occur over a couple
Years.
days.
Yes.
This was
years of his
of-
life were spent being beaten by the devil,
Yeah.
beaten by the enemy. Everything that he loves is taken away from him. And he, at one point, wants to die.
Yeah.
He's like, just kill me now.
Already, yeah.
Like,
And a lot of us have been there.
right. And our disappointment is improperly placed most of the time. We're disappointed that God hasn't given us what we think he should give us, when really he's like, well, if you just shut up and quit complaining.
Yeah, let me talk for a minute.
Yeah, I can bless you, but you don't want to listen to
Yeah.
my voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was cleaning, and the Holy Spirit said, "Shut off the noise so you can hear me." And I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
Shut that vacuum on, shut the world off. Come to where I am and listen to what I have to say.
Yeah, I spent 10 years of my life being disappointed, and for the first time, not listening to God and just thinking, it's not fair.
Right.
And I went through 10 years of that, and that was an awful feeling. And all the things that were happening to me were like, they weren't that. I mean, yeah, bad things happen to everybody. A divorce, just not really happy in my job. Just really felt like nothing was going right in my life. Just couldn't get that ball rolling again. But really, overall, I never looked at those things as an opportunity. Like, okay,
Right.
this has ended, but
Right.
what could possibly begin if I,
from
like
it.
I said, just shut up a minute and
Yep.
listen? We could figure this out.
Yep.
But I refused to do that. But when my dad passed away, that was something awful. That was
Yeah.
something totally unexpected. Never thought that would happen the way that it did.
Even then, let's that statement is not a fair statement, because you never think it's going to happen.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right,
Like for me right now, my parents are invincible as far as I'm concerned. My grandparents are invincible.
My
They're
mom
going to
had
live
already
forever.
passed away, so I knew what it was like to lose one parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was ready for that because she'd been sick for so
Sure.
long that I had
Right.
built myself up for it for over 15 years.
Yeah.
But my dad passing away was such a sudden thing. But the point I wanted to make was, instead of continuing on with that mindset of, okay, now why do I deserve this? Why is this happening? When I went to the chapel at the hospital and I talked to God and I said, whatever is your will, I accept it. I really want him to stay. I said, but whatever is your will,
Yeah.
I will accept it. And I can tell you 100% after I prayed about that, in that way, I never feared it again.
Yeah.
It's like, I was prepared. I was prepared for him to pass away, and I never. Gosh, I don't want to say I didn't grieve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the same. It was just like
but your flesh is grieving, not your spirit. Your spirit has
it was
accepted
just like
what's
a
happening.
completely
Yeah.
different thing.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, so I wish I would have done that during that 10-year period.
Sure.
I wish
Sure.
I would have went right to him and
Yeah.
made that the focus of my disappointment. But I didn't, and
You
it's
see,
just
that's spiritual maturity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You matured in that
Yep.
10 years to know how to go to the Father and say, "Your will, Father, not mine."
either that or you finally just say, I know you're not going to shut up. So
Yeah.
I'm just
I'm
going
gonna talk over top of it.
You
get
really
louder.
had to do something to wake me up.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's spiritual maturity. You'll handle disappointments a lot differently.
Sure.
Once you get there. But it takes a long time.
I had a day like that today. It was one of those days where it didn't matter what we did. It just couldn't go right. It just started off bad and just continued to just compound. And I won't list all of the crazy things that happened, but just starting in the morning, just everything kind of like got off the rails. And so we're doing a big event at work, and it's basically all hands on deck. I don't do my own desk work, my own paperwork. I'm spending my time, I don't want to say putting out fires, but like preparing for the next issue. But today, literally, we were putting out fires, like literal fires. So we didn't have to get out a fire extinguisher or anything. But somebody came over to me and they said, "Hey, the lights aren't working in the ladies' restroom, and it smells like something's melting." And I'm like, well, that's not good. There are ladies in there using the restroom. It's a big public restroom. So we get everybody out of the restroom. We put up the close sign. I go and flip the breaker. And I lift the ceiling tiles because we have recessed lights and you can see them in the ceiling tiles. Nothing looks odd.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I can smell it. Something is burning. Something is melting. And it dawned on me, it's possibly the light switch. So we take the screws out of the light switch, and sure enough, everything inside of that light switch is completely melted. Now, this light switch has been there for almost 5 years.
Sounds like the one here.
Yeah. And nothing was sinister. Nothing had happened. But you could see where whoever installed that electrical box had run a drywall screw through the side of the box in order to get it to stick to the drywall. And the hot wire had touched it and just started a fire. Huh. Okay. So I'm dealing with that. I walk out of there and I walk into another space in the hotel, and there's an employee complaining about something that had happened in another part of the building. And I'm thinking, God, I really don't need this right now. Like, I am trying to maintain composure, and this is not going well for me. And so I continued to think about it, and then it started again. And every time somebody would start complaining, somebody'd start complaining. And I was like, I can't do this. So I had to walk away. I had to walk away and just say, okay, I know that this is not what you want to have happen. And so I'm not going to allow it to continue. So we, as a team, had to go out and do a Q&A with a group of people. And so one of the first points that I made while we were all sitting there was that most of us who work inside of that company either currently serve in a church, on staff in a church, or have been on staff or have served in a church in some capacity in the past. And would you believe that changed the mindset right away? Because nobody was thinking about it in the heat of the moment. Right. We're frustrated and we're disappointed that, like, this, why can this not be easy? And then you realize that
what's happening.
This is not what we want to have happen.
Yeah.
And so
that's a great part of leadership right there.
And you have
being able to say, okay.
Yep, you have to be able to pull that
back,
back, right? So then this is, and I don't remember who shared this last week, but for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me. I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. And that was one of those moments. That was one of those moments where I just had to say, hey, listen, I don't want to do this myself anymore. Yeah. I need you to figure this out for me. I need you to what is it that I need to do in order to balance this back out? How do I tip the scales in your favor and not in the enemy's favor?
Right.
And that was all it was. It was a simple statement. So, yeah. Any other good points? No? Okay, well then I'll keep talking. One of the other points that I have is that we have to remember that in all things, we have to trust God.
Yeah.
In all things. It doesn't matter what it is. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, funny, not funny, all of those things. We have to know that God has appointed us for such a time as this.
Yeah.
And whatever the situation is happening for a reason.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that's for Christians. That's a superficial thing to say. When non-Christians hear us say that, they think,
everything
that's
happens
what they
for a
always
reason.
say.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I agree with that.
Yeah, sure.
To some degree, it can be like if I said to you, oh, well, I throat punched so-and-so. Well, everything happens for a reason. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that when I face a mountain, I'm facing that mountain so that I can cast it into the sea.
Yeah.
So that I can say,
and you
be thou
see
removed.
no way around this mountain during this time.
That's the idea of that adversity. The adversity is not there. I'm not saying that I have to, everything happens for a reason. It really, truly does.
Even when you don't see it.
And you have to look for the reason.
Right.
You can't just, here we are again.
Yeah.
Another bad thing has happened, and we're just going to deal with it and move on with our lives. No. God, what are you trying to show me? What is it that I need to learn from this moment? Don't put screws in electrical boxes. Lesson number 1, right? Like, there we go. We've learned something.
Safety.
Right? Yeah.
No, just talking about Grant in the Vicksburg campaign, like I said, from October until July, setback after setback. He thinks his strategy is going to work. Everybody's telling him it's not going to work, but he's like, well, I'm going to put my faith in it anyway. Tries it. It doesn't work. But instead of, sitting there and being like, okay, let's give up. A lot of good things came from those setbacks of, well, maybe he found out that somebody was better at commanding that situation, that he needed somebody to do a certain job, to be there at a certain time. And he was able to filter those people out and figure out who he really needed to get that job done. And it's just, some of it was just trial and error, but a lot of it was just faith. Like,
right.
we're going to get this right. It's just a matter of time. And the main thing for him is he had to cross the river in order to get on the same side of the enemy. And that was the big thing, was like, well, how do we get over there? Because, they're just
Catapult.
We try to send our gunboats, they blast us away.
Yeah.
all these different things happen. So, like I said, that's a long time. I mean, from, October to July, and
9
being
months.
under warfare every single day.
It's 9 months.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I counted them out.
so, yeah, think about that. I mean, that's tough.
One of the things we talked about last week that I'd really like to get back into, if we can make that transition, is how we manage those expectations as Christians for that disappointment.
Yeah.
So
For us or for other people?
in general. So
Both,
for us, we kind of know that, quote unquote, again, things happen for a reason. All of this happens for a reason. We understand that. But like you guys said, it's a generic term to the
Yeah.
rest of the world. So how do we manage that expectation for them, where they can say, okay, they're saying that all of this happens for a reason, but why would God
Do
make
such-
this person that way? Why do they make them a rapist or
Right,
pedophile?
yeah.
Like they try to take that statement and twist it so that
Yeah.
it makes God look like the bad guy.
Right.
So how do we manage that expectation? How do we make people understand that while God has created all things, he works them together for his good?
Yes.
He can't stop. I mean,
Evil
he can.
things.
He can stop
Sure.
evil things, but some of those things happen so that I don't want to say this sounds terrible, so that people can learn lessons, because that's what the world wants us to say. But so that things can come together for the good. You see bad things happen, and then good things come from those
Well,
bad
think about
things.
it. There's two teams on the field. There's God's team, there's Satan's team.
Yes.
Okay, now, God has a plan. But what happens if you're not in the huddle
You
before
don't know the
next
plan.
play?
You don't know what's happening.
You don't know what it
Yeah,
is.
you don't know what's happening.
And you're going to go out there and you're going to get clobbered.
Run in circles.
Yeah. And you're going to affect the rest of the team.
And you create confusion.
Right. So that's the first thing. If you're not in the huddle, so maybe this is something all the guys can understand.
Is
Gotta
this basketball?
Football.
Golf.
Well,
Tennis.
Golf.
sure.
Tennis. We're in the tennis huddle.
Yeah. If you're not in the huddle, if you don't know the play, you don't know the plan.
Better go sit on a bench.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
be-
Yeah, you're going to be on the
that's
bench
right.
your whole life.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not a bad thing to be on the bench.
Nope.
It's not, because sometimes
They need that support.
Listen, if I've got a knee injury and I'm playing football, probably not the best guy to have on the field, right?
Right.
So if I'm struggling with something in life, I'm probably not the best guy to be serving or trying to
During
do.
that time.
I need to sit on the bench, lick my wounds, get all healed up, and then I can come back out and play again, right?
Yeah.
Like dodgeball. Let's talk about that for a second. Like that was intense. Now, I learned that it was harder on my body to take a break in between games versus just continuing to play.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
But if I didn't take that break, I would have been complaining at the end of the night that
Yes.
oh, I'm so tired, I'm so sore, all of those
Whole
things.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can look at it. It's a two-headed snake. You can look at it and say, well, that was hard on my body. Oh, well, if I would have played the whole time, that would have been even harder. But my brain doesn't remember that. Let's talk to the ladies for a second. Any woman who has ever had a child, and then they go, oh, I want another one. What happened where you forgot what that pain was? Because do you see what I'm saying? Like we forget that life is painful as
Yeah.
Christians because we get wrapped up in the goodness. We get wrapped up in the Sunday morning worship service and all of the wonderful music that we can listen to all week. And so when the bad stuff happens, we freak out. We don't know what to do with ourselves.
Well, I think the same thing happens, though, with women, though. Think about that with childbirth. You think, okay, after the first one, why would you want to go through that again? Well, think about it, though, because after the pain comes all that love.
Right.
That
It's worth
beauty,
it.
yes.
All
Yeah.
of that comes after that. So, of course, you forget about the pain because you're only concentrated on that love. And what's that?
Not
Oh,
pain's
I'm not going to say a little bit of
temporary.
pain, so yeah, I'm not going there. But yeah, but what's some pain compared to the reward?
Exactly.
Right.
And
I
what will
labored for
come
33
afterwards.
hours, and I remember nothing of the pain, but I remember the beauty of my daughter.
Right. Yeah. So that's something we really have to focus on is disappointment comes with a lot of pain. I mean, that's, that could just be another meaning for disappointment.
Yeah.
One and the same. But most of the time, if we're willing to go through it and find the positive things that come out of that, then you forget all about the disappointment.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it builds your character. You'll remember it, but it's not what you dwell on. You dwell on all the positive things that have come out of it, and we got to keep that in mind. It, I think I don't want to say God causes disappointments. I don't know if He puts them upon you, but
Well, and
He's
it's
not going to
also-
just lift you out of it if He thinks
Well, and
it's
that's
going to
also
help
the
you
devil
grow.
working too. Like,
Yeah.
it's,
Again, which
God
team do you
isn't
play
doing-
for?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a big, and I don't think a lot of people in today's world understand that. Like, they're like, well, God makes everything out to be, and it's like, well, also there's another side working
There's-
just as
well,
hard, if not harder.
We all have free will. That's the big part to remember. We don't. Yes, again, God is working things out for His good.
Right.
That doesn't mean He's calling every shot. He's saying, "Hey, Nick, here are two options. You decide. Hey, Nick, you can either go ask for that raise or you can sit on your hands." Right?
Yeah.
He's giving you those options. How you handle that is completely up to you. Now, He's going to take that and He's going to make something good of it. Especially if you're somebody who genuinely believes that God will do all good things
Right.
in your life. He will continue to do that. But you can't read tarot cards and play with your Ouija board and then show up at church
Yeah.
on Sunday morning
Right, yeah.
and expect God to bless that. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that He won't, because He can work through all
Can't
of those
make
things.
God the last resort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't say, "Hey, send good vibes." And then when I say I'm praying for you, "Oh, I don't believe in God." And then six days later you're like, "Hey, can you pray for me?" It can't be a last
Right.
resort.
No.
It has to be the first choice
Yes.
every
Yeah.
time.
Well, and like many people say, God's plan B is always better than your plan A.
Absolutely.
And so, like you're saying, God's got two paths for me. But again, if I'm not in the huddle, okay, if I've screwed the first part of it up, but I'm way over here, not paying attention to the strategy or what we're trying to do, I'm not going to know what plan B is.
And when you get tackled
then
and
you
tackled
just-
hard,
Yeah.
you don't understand what
and-
happened.
And it's all for nothing.
Yep.
You're just going to continue to
You-
get bludgeoned and you have no purpose.
you'll always have a concussion. You're just
Yeah,
wandering
yeah,
around with a
pretty
concussion.
much. Yeah, you'll always be in a daze. Just
Well, it's true. You're either going into a battle, you're going through a battle, or you're coming out.
Yeah.
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 It's a constant.
or you've ran away right
Cycle.
from the start.
And do we feel
Yeah.
like we're always on a high when we're coming out of the battle?
Oh yeah.
Like we feel
Yeah.
we're on a high coming out of that battle, like, hey, this has been good, this has been great, but we forget about all of the bad stuff during the battle, the prep into the battle, like coming into it. We forget about all of those things and we're just like, yeah, victory.
Right.
But if all that didn't happen, how would we grow our faith?
We wouldn't.
No.
Right,
We would just sit here.
right. And God says we grow from faith to faith, from experience to experience. And so if bad things, we can't live in sunshine always.
no.
No.
There's going to come a storm, going to be some rain.
Yeah.
But then when the sunshine comes, we're like, praise the Lord
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Now, and so let's think about the Israelites, because you're right. Logically, we are excited. So God provides for them manna every day. And, if the sun shines for too stinking long, we're like,
It's too high.
it's too, it's
wait
too
for fall.
Yeah. When's fall going to get, I want to see the leaves change. And then, so it's that the mindset is we become complacent in Christ because we don't think that we have to grow. Like, I read my Bible every day. I don't care if you read your Bible every day. Oh, well, I pray every day. I don't care if you pray every day. Are you genuinely forming a relationship
Right.
with Christ that is meaningful? Like, my wife and I haven't seen each other for probably 3 weeks at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we can't continue to have a marriage this way. Like, it only lasts for so long, right? And it's only been 3 weeks. There are some of us who are 30, 40, 50 years old, and we have never been in a relationship with Christ where we have ever been actually intimate with Him, where we've sat and talked with Him.
Right.
So tonight, when I get home, and I hope my wife is listening to this, she's going to go to Walmart and buy all the stuff, and we're going to stuff a bunch of Easter eggs again tonight. And that's how we're going to spend our quality time together.
Yeah.
But when I spend time with God, it has to be with Him and Him. And I say Him alone, but I can't have distractions.
Distractions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said, shut off the noise,
Yep.
turn off the vacuum. I don't need to have the TV on. I need to spend time just listening to what he has to say. And that's where we mess up.
See, intimacy is into me see,
Yes.
into my heart see
Yes.
God. And let me see into your heart. And let's become one. Let's become one vessel, Father.
Yeah.
And that's what causes a good relationship.
Yep.
Is when things go bad, I ain't running to Nick and to Roger. I'm running to God.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, this has happened, this isn't something like 2 weeks I pay no attention to him. Now there's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
He's my best
Last-
buddy.
my
Exactly.
last resort.
No,
once
he's
again.
my first resort always.
Yeah. I'm talking to him about things that I may not even need to talk to him about. I'm like, hey, you know what? I was thinking about putting gas in the car this afternoon. I'm going to stop and do that. Just whatever you're going to do with that,
who knows?
$1.99 a gallon would be nice.
Who knows, he might say,
number.
Michael, don't go to the gas station right now.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
But because you took that time
Yep.
to seek him,
Yep.
Right.
he gave you direction.
Yep. And so I think that that's the trick, is that it's first and foremost. It's not second or third.
Yes.
It is always the first thing that you do in even the littlest of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Even in the littlest of things.
Just like with your electric switch. That was God.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally a revelation knowledge of better go check that switch.
Right.
Had nobody been in that bathroom, we would have not known for probably another solid hour, at which point it would have been on fire. It would have actually been burning. For me to even, there were lots of God moments in that. So I had a flashlight in my car. I never carry a flashlight. I don't remember what I used it for, but I just left it why did I have it in there?
Well,
I
you
went
know.
to my dad's house and I helped him work on something. And I knew he was going to have some like little rinky dink flashlight. And I have this great big, like, burn your eyeballs out flashlight. And I'm like, I need some light. So I had it in my car.
Yeah.
Again, why would I do that? And I climbed up into the ceiling and I was able to use that flashlight to see. Again, odd that I would even have it. And then for me to be on that ladder and go, I'm going to check that light switch. There's that. And then to be able to pull that off and see immediately what the exact problem was
Yep.
and to be able to resolve it quickly. That's not something that just happened.
Right.
That is
Yeah,
favor.
you're not a
I'm not an electrician. I don't know anything about this stuff.
No.
It was 4 screws to pull that thing out. But that was God's favor. That was God's favor because I was obedient and I listen and I talk and I consume what it is that he has to tell me
Right.
at every turn.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have an open dialogue.
Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes what I think he's saying to me is me manipulating it so that I
Right.
get what I want.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's not a big deal. You can buy that and you can just pay it off with your bonus. And then I don't get a bonus. And I'm like, why'd you
Did you
do
buy
that?
another
Yeah.
Pokemon card?
Shh, don't tell.
Yeah, he did.
Don't tell. And I think about that all the time. Like, I'm the one messing this up most
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
given me what I need to have,
Yes.
but I'm not using it the way he means for me to use it. So that doesn't feel good to hear either.
No.
Like there are people listening to this right now going, "Ooh, that didn't feel good," but it's true.
Yeah.
It's
I have a
It is.
funny example when you were talking about all the noise. Like on Facebook, do you see the reels?
yeah.
Okay, so
Are you not a doomsday scroller, but do you just
well,
keep scrolling?
Get you get in the hole.
So somehow I've fallen into these
black
reels.
holes, okay.
I get a lot of Billy Graham reels on.
Oh,
there.
yeah.
and I love to listen to his sermons, so I'll be like, okay, Billy Graham, and I'll be watching that one. Another Billy Graham, I'm like, yeah, that was great. And then all of a sudden there's a pro wrestling one, and then I go down. All of a sudden I'm watching pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe another. Oh, hey, there's Billy Graham again. Oh, great. So then I get back into it. I keep going a couple more, and then it's I don't know
Hours
something-
later.
it's something else, And then it's like so you're like So it's like okay, yep, I'm paying attention, yep, and then all of a sudden, just like that.
So that
Yeah.
that is how, and I will stand by this until the day I die. That is how the enemy is working in today's world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
Facebook algorithms,
Oh,
TikTok algorithms, here's
Put
what
it
they
this
do.
way. If you go from listening to Billy Graham talk to listening to Ric Flair, you don't know what you're doing. You're on both ends of the spectrum.
Never know what you're gonna get.
And it's
So what's
it's not
interesting,
good.
because I've done that. So I remember, and I'm really bad. I get up at about 3 a.m. every morning and usually have a snack.
Peanut butter.
Now I was going to say that's the peanut butter and Coca-Cola snacks. It's not really a snack, but that's what I call it.
I'm picturing the raccoon in the
Yeah,
middle of the
doesn't-
kitchen.
Zombie raccoon, more like it. But so I'll be watching, and maybe it's a worship video. I don't know what it is, but I'm watching that. And so Facebook knows, like, hey, in order to suck him in, I'm going to give
Yep.
him 3 or 4 more of these. And then, oh, hey, by the way, I know that you like Elvis, so the next 3 videos are Elvis videos. And then I go from Elvis videos to Britney Spears.
Yep.
And then I go from Britney Spears to conspiracy theories, and the next thing I know, we didn't land on the moon. Like, like it just, but
And the Earth is flat.
yeah, and the Earth is flat. What happens is those.
Oh, I saw one. Sorry. Bigfoot is actually blurry.
Oh, he's blurry. That's why
he is blurry. It's not the cameras. It's not. He is
He
actually
is.
blurry, and that's why
Oh.
every time somebody gets him on film,
he's
you
blurry
can't see him because he's blurry. No,
because
blurry.
he is
Fast.
physically
It's
blurry.
a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
He's an
Yeah, he's
alien.
fast.
He's an alien.
He's really fast. He's like the Flash. But what I realized is that Facebook knows us so well. And this is everywhere. This isn't just Facebook. This isn't just TikTok,
Yeah.
Twitter, whatever. Everybody knows us so well. YouTube is the same way. They will feed you what they know will draw you in, and then they will change what they give you ever so slightly. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't take much to take that leap from
No.
watching 3 worship songs to watching an Elvis
To
song.
3
Because I'm like,
Elvis.
oh, yeah, I really like that one. Ooh, I haven't heard this one in a long time or whatever. And the next thing I know, I'm listening. And the reason I used Britney Spears as a joke was because they have made a mashup of a Britney Spears and an Elvis song. And so it doesn't take, that's not a huge leap. So
Right.
you hear
If
that
they're
song,
already doing the mashup.
you hear that
Yeah.
you hear that mashup song. That's the 3rd Elvis song you hear. The next thing you know, we're on Britney Spears conspiracy theories about her guardianship and all of these
Yeah.
things. And the next thing I know, I'm in this black hole. And seriously, like, we didn't land on the moon. There's no way we landed
Now
on
it's
the moon.
time to go to work, and
Yeah.
I just lost 4 hours of
Yeah,
sleep.
I was gonna say I haven't slept in 2 days because I've been researching the moon landing.
Well, and last night I was pretty tired because on Monday we had volleyball.
Car wash lights kept you up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sorry.
We had volleyball Monday, and it was the championships. They actually got 2nd place,
Nice.
but they lose their first game like 20-5, and we're like, okay, we're gonna be out of
We're
here.
going home.
This is like
this
a
is gonna
5,
be an early
5:30.
night.
So we're there till after 9 o'clock. We don't get home till after 10. So didn't sleep Monday,
And it's important-
I hadn't slept well on Sunday either. So I'm like going on like 2
And it's
days
im-
of really bad.
It's
sleep.
important to note that you get up super early in the morning. Like,
Yeah,
this
I get up
isn't-
like at 4:40 when the
Yeah.
alarm goes off. I mean, I lay there
Attaboy.
till 5, but it still goes off at 4:40. So what was I going to say? Darn it.
you lost your first match.
Yeah.
Second-
Well, anyway, so last
what happens
night
when you get old.
I'm doing the reels thing because I'm so tired and
Yeah.
I can't really focus on anything. It's the only thing I really can do. Of course, Margie comes in. She's like, "You've been on that way too long." She goes, "Don't you have a podcast you should be preparing for tomorrow?" Yeah, but you know.
She just liked our post, so I know she's listening. So she's hearing that.
So,
Good
yeah,
job,
so I got
Margie.
in trouble last night for
Not doing your homework.
going down the black hole.
Yep.
So the idea of that is that we have conditioned ourselves that that's how we process things in our lives. We process things by going straight to social media, whether it's event posts. And I have seen the part that blows my mind is I have seen Christians go, okay, I'm gonna rant. I hate this. God bless all of you. No. Like, that's not how we do that. If you have a problem, go to the Father.
Go straight to the. Yep.
You go to the Father, go to the source, because He is going to resolve it. And even if, we've talked about this before too, even if He resolves it in a way that you didn't see,
Yeah.
you don't know anything about
Or
it.
if it doesn't come right away, God forbid.
There's a young lady who used to be in our young adult group that doesn't really, she's not connected to our church. She never really was, but like was connected to our group. And I saw, this is me putting it out there. This is me being honest with you. This is me as a pastor being petty. Okay. So I just need you to be okay with that. I see that this person job hops a lot. I see that they get a new car, and I'm like, they can't afford that. Like, why do they get a new car? That's stupid. And all the while I'm thinking, like, I know in my mind that I am being malicious for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if they got a new car. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not the one
Doesn't
making the
affect
payment.
you.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's their choice. But something inside of us, that's what, like, the world has conditioned us to be that way.
Yeah.
To say mean things to people because it's easier than being excited for somebody that got something that we would have never expected them to be able to have. But God has blessed them and given it to them, and we need to be excited about it. And not
Right.
just that. We are, this is the big one for me because I have a hard time with this. I'll be honest with you. We are not just called to meet the spiritual needs, but the earthly needs of the people around us.
Yeah.
And so when you have that person that calls the church and they say, I need $20 to get to work next week, my immediate response is, well, you haven't been to work all week, so why do you need to go tomorrow?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not what we're called to do. We're
Right.
supposed to be able to help. But the world has conditioned us to be
the other way.
somewhat hard. And that's part of what the church has to fix, because we can't continue to create disappointment for people who don't know Jesus, because they're not, again, it's misplaced disappointment. They're not disappointed in organic church. They're not disappointed in whatever ministry didn't give them the $20. They're disappointed that Jesus didn't
provide.
deliver.
Yeah.
And they could have been praying for that $20 the whole way over here. We don't know their life.
Right.
Like, I don't know them.
Right.
And we turn them away. That's it. It's bad to
Yeah.
say, but it's easy to do.
It's easy to do because everyone else is doing it, and then it's too late because by the time you're thinking about it, you've already denied them.
Yep. And so then we have created an expectation that all churches are the same. And that every church you go to will disappoint you. Every church that you go to will let you down.
Yeah.
And that's not what Jesus has called us
No.
to do. And it's not really who any of us are personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sometimes when you're stewarding the money of a congregation, it's hard to make those decisions.
yeah.
It's really hard to, how do I justify paying somebody's rent?
Yeah.
And my response is this, and this is what I tell everybody. I tell everybody, I'm not going to give you a short-term solution. So if you're saying, hey, can you put me up in a hotel room for tonight because I'm homeless? No.
Yeah.
Because that's not a long-term solution.
Right.
I've gotten you a room for tonight. But what do we do tomorrow night?
Exactly.
What do we do the night after that? What can we do to help you find permanent housing?
Yeah.
That's the question that I ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I openly admit, and you guys know this, especially the people sitting in this room, you know this about me. I make no bones about when I fall short.
No.
Because I think that is one of the things that we do best here is we're very humble.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I know that I am not perfect. I know I joke about it all the time, but I know that I am not perfect. And I know that I don't always get it right. But it's different when you look at it through the lens of disappointment that you've created
Yeah.
versus disappointment that you feel.
Yeah.
Like, I feel disappointed when somebody doesn't show up for church on Sunday.
Yes, that's a big disappointment.
That's disappointing for me. And I'm never mad at that person, but here's typically what happens. Sunday morning, I'll get a text from somebody that says, hey, I'm not going to be there this morning. And I'm immediately frustrated because I'm like, I need you here. Like,
Yeah.
and most people don't know that. And I know when we prayed for a particular congregant a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I want what you've got. I hug that person because I want what they have. They're like, what? They don't realize how missed they are
Yes.
when
Right.
they're not
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I feel about just about everybody in our building. They're like everybody, I get something from everybody that comes to the door. And so when they're not here, there's a little bit of disappointment.
Yeah, the piece missing.
Like I was going to say, a puzzle piece.
So
missing.
then I have options. There are options on the table. I can do, well, I'm really disappointed that you're not going to be here. I can send that text, or I can say, oh, you're really going to be missed. I love you. Hope you're well. See you next week, or whatever. How I handle that situation determines whether or not they're going to feel my disappointment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So now my disappointment is either going to create more disappointment or upset somebody for no reason. Like, how do I manage that how do I manage the expectation that everybody, because let's be real. We've been running close to 80 every week for several weeks now. And not that numbers matter, but it
No.
is exciting to
Yeah.
see new people in the church,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
New faces,
yeah.
even some old faces. They're not
Yeah.
always new faces. It's super exciting to see that. Last Sunday, we were at 62, 63? Mid-60s.
Yes, yeah,
mid-60s.
mid-60s.
I was so disappointed when I walked in the sanctuary. Now,
Where were we at this time last year?
Exactly.
we don't even want to talk about it. We don't even want to talk about that. But so that's my point. My expectation is because 3 Sundays in a row, we were at almost 80. We should have been at 80 last Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not taking into consideration 60% of our congregation didn't have power.
Right. Yeah.
Like, those things happen and you can't control that. I'm disappointed when people send a text to me and they say, hey, I want to volunteer for KidsMin. And then when you send them a text back, they don't respond.
yeah.
Or they're like, oh, I thought about it. I don't think that's a good idea. Like, that's just, then why did you say it in the first place? So,
to be noticed.
and so my
Whatever.
my
I mean,
mind
I- you
reels
know, I don't know.
my mind reels through all of those things as disappointment. Like, I'm disappointed that these things happen, but I am disappointed in people or in flesh, not in the fact that Jesus has called them here, and so I'm accepting of that, and I'm excited about
Right.
that, and I want them to serve when they're ready to serve, when they feel like they're mature enough to do that. But I can't allow my disappointment to create additional disappointment or additional upset.
Yeah.
So I have to manage my expectation of what
Yep.
of what disappointment looks like and how I handle it.
Yep, with love.
Yeah, and that's hard.
Yeah. As flesh. Yeah.
You just it's hard to say, okay, this person misses 3 times a month and but they still text me and say, "Hey, so sorry I can't be here." Like
Yeah.
I mean, Sid, and I'm not picking on you, but
No,
like
absolutely not.
her job requires
Yeah.
her to be at work. But I notice when she's not here on Sunday mornings. That's like that
Oh,
for me
yeah.
is it's one of those things. Like I really wish we could figure that out. Well, we can eventually figure that out. God is going to put her in a place where she has health care and she's able
Right.
to be off on. All of those things are going to happen. But if I allow my disappointment to reflect poorly, then Sid doesn't stick around for very long. She's like, "Well, I can't do anything right. Like this guy's always upset with me about something. That's not healthy for anybody."
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it's hard stuff. It's really hard to do that with love. It really is. It really is.
When I worked every other weekend, and I so missed being here, and I prayed the prayer of Zerubbabel. Is that how you say his name? Zerubbabel.
Yes.
He said, "Who are you, great mountain, that you will not bow down
Yeah.
and lay
Yeah.
low before my God?"
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I didn't pray that once. I knocked the door down to God all the way to work, all the way home.
Yeah.
And, I declared favor.
Yeah.
And that God was going to open up a new door for me. And who knew I was off and had cataracts and came back to work and they hired me full time?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
God.
That's
Yep.
God.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, you got to speak to that mountain.
Yeah. It's,
And that's the challenge. The call to action from this is that we have to speak life
out.
and not death, and we have to be saying that my God can handle whatever it is
Yeah.
that's coming at me. I trust that no matter what happens, He is going to have the glory.
Amen.
He is going to have the glory regardless
Right.
of the circumstance. If I don't like it, God still gets the glory.
Yep.
If you don't like it, God still gets the glory. Because what I want isn't necessarily what he wants. His plan A or his plan B is always better than my plan A, just like you said, Nick.
Right.
I can't outdo God's doings.
No.
I think I can.
you can try.
I would
but he's
love
so-
I would love to be able to have his playbook so I know what he's going to do and
Yeah.
it makes my life easier, but that's not the case. It's
Yeah.
never going to happen. He's never going to give it to us. We're always going to be chasing what's next.
In Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, it says that he says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts,
Yeah.
and my ways are not your ways.
Yeah.
And isn't the heaven higher than the earth, saith the Lord?" And so, he's got it all together. We just have to fall into the plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where, I've thought that many times, God, your way's not my way's not your way.
Yeah.
Teach me your ways. Show me the way to go. Guide me, lead me, direct me. That's how we get in line with him. To have I always pray, God, let me be a perfect circle. And I swear I could almost get it and I turn into an egg. And then, I'm just like, come on, God, let's get it together. We can balance this thing out together. Egg.
Yeah.
But, my heart's desire is to be a complete circle with him. But no matter how hard I try, I'm an egg.
That's one of the things about our particular denomination, and I make no bones about how I feel about our
Yeah.
denomination, and I just
Sorry.
I just
No,
don't
sorry.
I just don't.
Yeah.
And I believe that Sister Amy, when she founded the Foursquare Gospel, the message that she preached was true. That God is a balanced.
Yeah.
It is a balanced gospel.
Yeah.
God is a balanced God. Everything that he does is balanced and good. We are the unbalanced
Amen.
ones. We are the
Yeah.
unbalanced
Yep.
ones. We are the deficit to the plan. Like we are the common denominator to all bad
Yeah.
things. Not him, us. And while I don't always agree with the politics of our denomination, I believe that message today, if she were to preach that message today, it would resonate equally as true today as it did then.
Oh yeah.
And I can't wrap my head around how we as humans can still be quite so daft as to not see that we are the problem and not God.
Right.
Yeah.
That we have to fix that. We've reached an hour. I don't mind if we keep
Okay.
going if you guys have some more.
I got something here I want to read.
First of all, I need
got
to
his
tell
glasses
I
on.
need to tell the listeners that he's got it on his phone.
Yeah, I got it on my phone.
Yes.
I even took a picture of it. It
Oh,
was off the computer.
Screen.
Oh,
wait,
gosh, he got a literal screenshot. Oh, this is epic. This is good. This is good.
For those that don't know, I have a real hard time with my phone.
With technology in general.
Yeah,
technology.
You got it, Roger. We
Yeah.
believe
We
you.
got you, buddy.
Okay, it says, Lord, let me be an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be counseled to it. This stupid phone. Counsel to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we be pardoned. And it is dying that we are born to eternal life.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Amen.
St. Francis of Assisi.
Yeah. That's a fantastic statement. All of those things. I mean, when we think about what we want, we have to learn in order to be loved, we have to be able to love.
Yes.
In order to be able to be forgiven, we have to forgive. All of those things. All of those things. That's
I think
fantastic.
that's what hit me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up for today, and we'll be back again next week. Sid, will you pray for us this evening? Okay.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this evening of fellowship, Lord. I thank you for allowing us to talk about all of the topics we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, and allowing us to, further our topic with disappointment, Lord. I hope that it, just reaches out to the right people, and now, or even 1 year from now, 2 years, 5, 20, whatever it may be, your will, your way. I just pray that everyone makes it home safe from the evening and has a great week.